New business, Mr. Superintendent, CI1. CI1.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. CI1, I recommend the board approve the agreement with Barwis Methods Training Center of South Florida, LLC, effective March 14th, 2019 through June 30th, 2023, and authorize the superintendent or designee to sign all documents and contracts related to the agreement which are required for implementation.
A motion by Mrs. Brill, second by Mrs. Andrews. Discussion? Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I'm going to support this, but I just have to push because we keep talking about equity, and I need to push towards equity, right? So this is an agreement with an organization that basically does, it looks like it does like sports, medicine-related work, right? And so our students, and the answer was the students who are in the sports something or other program, right?
Exercise science.
I'm sorry.
Exercise science.
Okay, the sports exercise science program, right? So I asked a question about, one about travel, because this, it said that this request was brought forward by West Boca, and we had this program, this exercise science class in multiple other schools. And so I asked a question about transportation. The answer came back that, well, either they do it themselves or sometimes a school can provide transportation. The question is there equity, right? So I want to circle back and get the information later about, do we know for certain that we have made provisions for all the children in these programs to have the ability to have such external experiences? I mean, it looks fantastic. They have a wonderful website. I mean, I don't really know. But, and then I asked a question about the people who provide the similar training, and the answer came back, it looked like everybody who does the, it's not called interns. I can't think of what the right word is.
The clinical agreement.
The clinical agreements for all the medical programs. I think you know that's not what I was asking. I want to know who else do we have the agreement with for this kind of exercise physiology or sports medicine programming? Because I want reassurance that as we move forward, we're trying to provide these outstanding experiences for all children, including those that don't have a car. And so that's just what I want to push there. I think this is fine. I think this is great. But I need to push, since we're talking about equity, all right? It's an equity circle for almost every agenda item. And so that's why I want to push on this one. So if you would provide me with all of us with that information as a follow-up.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, we will provide that as a follow-up. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. CI2, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir. CI2, I recommend the board approve the amendment with Florida Atlantic University Board of Trustees, FAU Outreach, effective March 14th, 2019 through June 30, 2020, and authorize the superintendent or designee to sign all documents and contracts related to the agreement, which are required for implementation.
Motion by Ms. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion, Dr. Robinson.
Yep. So you'll see I asked a question about, okay, let me just make a public statement again. I don't think we should have contracts that renew automatically forever. And that's what this amendment does. And we can say that it's reviewed annually by staff, by both parties, the staff of both parties, but that does not bring the accountability here to this dais, right? And so when we need to, as a board, look at these things, see how we've been doing, so that we can push to make things better at whatever intervals, right? So I had this conversation, like it seemed like with everybody. I'm not going to support this. Okay, I'm never going to knowingly support a contract that goes on forever and ever. Amen. Okay, and so I've gotten some reassurances, Mr. Barbier, Dr. Fenoy, if you would allow Dr. Licata to provide his reassurances publicly.
You sure that's fine?
Absolutely. As we spoke, we want to approve this because the students who are taking their industry certifications need their clinicals, and we have to have an agreement in order to certify that. But I assured Dr. Robinson, and with tremendous support, that we will go ahead and ask for an extended time of maybe a contract of 5 years, an agreement. Between the legal parties, it takes a very long time to get these through between FAU and ours because there's so much working with. So to do them every year or two would be crazy, but doing them every 5 years is reasonable. So after this evening, if it's approved tomorrow, we will start working on making sure we move it back into a 5-year or a term of sorts. This way it's not in perpetuity.
So I had this discussion with the general counsel after I saw Dr. Robinson's questions, and, my understanding is that we always have a 30-day termination provision in these contracts, right? Always.
All of
So
them,
if they're
yes.
multi-year, there's always a way for us to get out of it if we're not happy with what's happening?
Yes.
So doesn't that
Yes.
kind of satisfy you, Dr. Robinson?
Okay, so not at all, because we don't see it, right? So staff might be happy, everything might be going along smoothly as far as staff is concerned, and certainly they should have critical thinking applied to these annual evaluations. But this should come to us, right, at an interval, right? Because we're the ones who vote on this stuff, right? And so, no, that does not satisfy me, right? And the original version of this was for 3.5 years, right? So I would also suggest that there's some deliberation about what the appropriate terms would be. I mean, because it seems to be without rhyme or reason, right? Maybe it's clearly defined somewhere, but at least my viewpoint is without rhyme or reason. But the bottom line is, there needs to be, it needs to come to the board so the board can look and say, yes, doing a good job, ask our questions and renew, or make recommendations for improvement.
Mrs. Whitfield, then the general counsel.
Can I just ask why you would create a contract that doesn't have an end date? Is there a reason?
In this particular one, we provided the board a response. With FAU, they have a lot of oversight. The standards that are set, there's 4 different accreditations that the medical program goes through, versus your private entities, private clinics that we work with that have, most of those are annual renewals. So, and in addition, staff, Dr. Johnson's team meets twice a year with FAU to review programming. So in this particular case.
Well, let me just say, I have to agree with Dr. Robinson, that doesn't quite sit right, just as a general rule. So your assurances, Dr. Licata, is that we could fix this if we approve it today? Because I'm happy to give you more time if that's what it needs, but I think that we really should have some sort of an opportunity where it comes back to us.
This is always amendable because
Yes.
we meet so often, but we do have so many students in the program. We've been working with them for so many years. It's a great relationship, but yes, tomorrow morning we'll be working on it to make sure we set a timeline for it, which is, again, supported strongly.
And thank you, Dr. Robinson, for bringing that up.
Mrs. Rico?
Thank you. So the inquiry by Dr. Robinson provoked some conversation, thought around this issue, and as the board knows and as district staff knows, and we've discussed this with them, we review all of the contracts that come through our office with a checklist of multiple items, looking at terms and conditions of the contracts to make sure that they're satisfied for that legal sufficiency review and sign off that we do on contracts. In the future, where we review the term of the contract, we will also add a provision that requests or that identifies a justification for the number of years that the contract will last, so that there will be some intentional thought around it's a 2-year contract because to come back in 1 year may create a gap in the student's ability to, for continuity of a particular program. In other instances, it may be not applicable. A construction contract, for instance, by its very nature, is going to take a certain number of years to finish according to the project scope. Certain other instances regarding interlocal agreements for our joint use of parks and recreational areas, the justification would be something like it's mutually beneficial for the two governmental agencies to continue this for multiple years so that they have continuity of programming, et cetera. But I do think that, we've discussed this. I've discussed it with Mr. Oswald at length. And so I think that that's a good trigger point to create some intentionality around those terms and give some thought around the accountability piece and when it comes back.
So I have one concern here, and that's that if we have agreements with major institutions like FAU, hospitals that require their boards to approve these contracts, and they don't know that, and every year they have to get together with their board and do all of that, I'm afraid we're going to make it so complicated that some of these institutions are not going to want to deal with us because every year they have to deal with the school board. So can't we just have a policy put in place that if it's going to automatically renew, that it's your responsibility, the administration, to bring it to the board and say this policy is going to renew unless we give them notice in the next 60 days, or there's always that notice provision, so that you bring it to us and then we make the decision whether we want to give them notice to terminate, rather than trying to shorten these contracts so that every year we have to renegotiate the contract with the institution. Can't we just do that? There's a deadline that if we're going to cancel it, we have to do it within a time period. Otherwise, it's going to automatically renew. Why can't you bring it to the board and just say, this is going to renew unless the board, this is not going to renew unless the board, or it is going to renew unless the board says something otherwise? Can't you do that?
I think we can consult with legal, but it does sound doable that we just bring it to the board every year, that this is going to automatically renew without going through the entire process. Yes.
Dr. Robinson, that would kind of help with us not having to renegotiate the contract every day. At that point, we'd be able to either say we're not going to renew this contract unless you make some changes.
No, I never said every year. I never said
You
every
said
year.
multi-year contracts you didn't like.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
I said contracts that never end. This never ends.
Okay.
I'm good with automatic renewal every year for up to 3 years, 4 years. I'm not trying to do this every year.
Okay.
But it has to be a stop point that says this is going to be publicly reviewed, right? And to see if there's room for improvement. Now, I actually believe that if staff thinks it should be renewed, that we're not going to find fault. It's the principle thing. I mean, I'm going to remind you that I voted against prior superintendent's contract proposal because it was an automatically renewing evergreen contract. I don't believe in that. I think we, as a public entity, part of our responsibility is to publicly review these contracts. And this just happens to be one of them. I think the program is fine. I think it's great. I'm just troubled by what appears to me to be a new wave of never-ending contracts. This is the second one I've seen. I don't remember seeing those before. Maybe they slipped by me. I could have been asleep at the wheel. But as part of my question, and I didn't expect a quick response, but I did ask for a list of every contract that we have that just automatically renews forever and ever. Amen. Right? Because I don't think it's a bunch of them. And if they are, then I'm going to be asking for us to renegotiate that. Right? So it's not every year. I'm not trying to create that level of bureaucracy.
Okay. Ms. Breaux?
I think there's a misperception in saying that it renews automatically forever and ever, amen, because if you look at the attachment on the outreach program agreement, there's an amendment for paragraph 9, and it says this agreement hereby automatically renews each year unless terminated by either party in writing upon 30 days notice to the other party. So my thought was a hybrid. I support what Mr. Barbieri said. You're dealing with large institutions. If we could have something in policy where we do have a review or staff brings it back, but I don't see any reason why we should have to renegotiate that because there is an out. I mean, if we review it and we put it in writing or we go back to them, it doesn't continue forever. So it's not in perpetuity. It says here that with 30 days notice. So I just think it's a policy thing. I would not want to see us changing anything here because, as Mr. Barbieri said, we have to deal with their Board of Trustees and with the school district. I don't have a problem with it the way it's written.
Ms. Andrews, then Mr. Shaw.
Yes, I do hear Dr. Robinson, but I do believe, too, that we need to get this information periodically and look at it. Sometimes there may be different board members sitting up here, and they don't even know what you're talking about because it's already done. So I like the idea of passing this tonight and coming up with a timeline where, when it comes up again, that we get a chance to review the material, and if we feel that we need to kind of go to the table and do some renegotiations, then we'll do what we have to do. But this doesn't give us a chance to do anything, and as I sit here tonight, I may not be here, 3-4 years from now, and as a result, somebody sitting here says, what is this? So I think our solution tonight is good.
Yeah, and I think there really is an easy way to deal with this. Many years ago in adult education, there were a lot of, some of them were grants, so they had automatic ending dates. But there were also some contracts with the old funding done in adult ed that when we would come to the board with certain contracts that were just automatically renewed, I don't remember exactly what the words, but there was something in there that said after a period of time that it could be renewed, but with approval of the board. That kind of changes a little bit from the comments that are in the current one, and that may be the easiest way, because the one thing we don't want to do is get in a position where we lose those services. So I think just a change in words, and I can't imagine that any of those agencies, I can't imagine FAU would object to that.
If you don't mind, I think at this point I've heard the entire board. I think it's pertinent for the staff and Ms. Rico to get together. Now that I understand the concept, it does make sense at some point for it to come back to the board. I think the last couple of points around the fact that some of us may not be here. And so that actually is a very good point. And so I have no problem with staff working with Ms. Rico on figuring out that mechanism and that trigger.
Okay, for Dr. Robinson.
So I don't know if legal's going to tell me I'm out of order, but I'd like to amend this to add to it that we direct staff to immediately start working with FAU to renegotiate this with a finite contractual period.
Yep. And if we had had this conversation just a week earlier, we would have been able to do that. We just literally met with them, but we will take that back and get on it right away.
Do we have a second on Dr. Robinson's amendment? Seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion?
Just a quick question for Dr. Robinson. That doesn't mean with a finite thing that excludes the authority for the board to continue. We're not going to give FAU the idea that we're going to have a finite thing in contracts, just that it's got to be renewed after a certain number of years.
Yes.
Okay.
But the contract will have a start and an end date, right? And then it would need to be renewed, and it would need to come to the board in order to be renewed, right? But it would have the annual evaluation by staff by both sides to see if they want to continue, but it would have to come to the board at the end of whatever the contractual period would be.
Do you have Dr. Robinson, do you want to put some time in that, in your modification, so that they know what to tell FAU? You want 3 years, 5 years? What is?
Well, my inclination is 3 years, but I really would like to have some thoughtful evaluation, because I'm just pulling that out my back pocket. So I would like to have some thoughtful evaluation as to what would be in the best interest of all parties involved. But I think at the end of the day, we're responsible, so it has to come to the board.
And I would just say, instead of putting for all contracts, it'll be 3 years. Let's evaluate them and bring them, because there's two entities that have to come to that agreement. And before we would make a final determination, we would bring it to the board for your final approval. So I would like if we could just leave that open, and we'll bring that to you each time these extended contracts need to be discussed and formulated.
But, well, I guess my only question is, on this one, we're directing staff to go back to FAU and renegotiate this contract with a finite time in it. So we need to give them direction, because if they come back with 2 years and you guys aren't happy with that, then they've got to go back to FAU. So we need to come, on this particular contract, I understand not on every contract we're setting a time period, but on this one, if you want staff to go to FAU and come back with a contract, we need to give them some guidance like we do at the closed sessions on limitations on settlement. So what do you...
So why don't we come back with an amendment to tonight's agenda item with a finite number within the year of this contractual year that will amend the existing contract, which will have an ending date within a calendar year. So we move forward with tonight, within the calendar year, we'll come back with amendment to this, which will have a specific ending date.
Okay. So,
Yeah, that's fine. Let me follow up, because I think maybe Mr. Barbieri is talking about something different. So to clarify, that you would come back within a year with a renegotiated contract for a term of no more than 3 years, is what I'm suggesting for this. Not that every contract would be 3 years.
If let staff go back to look if 3 years is appropriate, or if, and
That's fine.
we'll bring it back to the board.
That's fine.
okay. So we're going to vote on the amendment to the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Now we're back on the main motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is FMPF1, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir. FMPF1, I recommend the board receive and accept the monthly contract and disbursement report as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mr. Shaw. Discussion? Dr. Robinson?
Okay, so I'm just pulling this again because we're not doing well enough with sharing the wealth, right? And as a follow-up to this, I would like to ask not only Mr. Burke, but Mrs. Paul and her Office of Diversity and Business Practices to give us some recommendations on what do you need from us to do better. But I just need to vote against it.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-1 with Dr. Robinson opposed. Next item is LD1, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, LD1, I recommend the board authorize the general counsel to file an appeal with the Fourth District Court of Appeal of the final order entered on March 12, 2019 in Renaissance Charter School, Inc. versus School Board of Palm Beach County, DOA case number 186195RU.
A motion by Mr. Shaw, seconded by Dr. Robinson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is P2, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the personnel addendum as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. P3?
Yes, sir, P3, I recommend the board approve the salary increases and revised salary schedules for school-based administrators as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. P4?
P4, Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the salary increases and revised salary schedules for NBU employees as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Brill, seconded by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. PC12?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the guaranteed maximum price, GMP, to State Contracting and Engineering Corporation for facilities renovations and repairs for K.E. Cunningham Canal Point Elementary School, and authorize the superintendent and board chair to finalize and sign all necessary documents.
Motion made by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. REG-N1.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the second addendum to the Memorandum of Understanding with the City of West Palm Beach that will provide 3 reading tutors to Northmore Elementary School.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And that takes us to the non-agenda topic speakers. We have several. Call you. Please come up to the podium on either the left or right. Mr. Mohammed?